October 5, 2025, Argentina, Entre Rios province. Along a dusty dirt road well away from the main routes surrounding the small town of Rosario del Tala, a single car has been abandoned. The surroundings are almost entirely deserted. It is bordered by farmland, where the only consistent traffic comes from the occasional piece of heavy agricultural equipment. Nothing has been done to conceal the car. The doors remain unlocked. More strangely, the keys are still sitting in the ignition, yet there is absolutely no sign of the person who had been driving. Consider the scene through an investigator's eyes. A vehicle left unlocked, keys inside, in such an isolated location strongly suggests that the journey ended without warning. People normally wouldn't abandon a car this way if they only intended to look around or walk away briefly. Whoever had been behind the wheel most likely left in a state of extreme panic and haste, or because another person compelled them to. When patrol officers reached the scene, they immediately checked the license plate against Argentina's national database. The vehicle belongs to a local woman, but she wasn't driving it on the night she disappeared. The driver had been her 22-year-old daughter, Diana Magali Mendieta. From that moment, a routine inspection of an abandoned vehicle becomes a full-scale investigation, because Diana has already been officially reported missing. The case had started 2 days before. On the evening of October 3rd, just before 8 p.m., Diana picked up the keys, calmly told her family she needed to handle some things, and departed from home. But there is a crucial detail. The car sat exposed for almost 48 hours before anyone discovered it. In a small community such as Rosario del Tala, where the population is relatively limited, that is an unusually long period. Diana's family had already grown worried and contacted authorities on October 4th when they were unable to reach her anymore. Investigators start collecting the basic details and soon uncover a highly specific digital clue. Only minutes before turning on the car and leaving home for the final time anyone knew where she was, Diana published one brief sentence on her personal social media account. "I'm diving headfirst into the first thing that makes me feel alive." Posting something like that on a normal Friday night in a provincial town is unusual. The language comes across as intense and deeply personal. It doesn't sound like a casual post about weekend plans. Instead, it seems Diana had reached a major decision and was preparing to cross some sort of line. It is entirely possible the post was really a coded message intended for one particular person. In a disappearance like this, one of the earliest steps investigators take is to locate the missing person's phone and determine whether it can provide any clues about her whereabouts. Detectives contacted the mobile carrier, hoping to identify the smartphone's final known location and retrace Diana's journey from the time she left home until the dirt road where her car was ultimately discovered. Yet they quickly encountered a problem. Her phone was entirely offline. This was not merely a drained battery. The device had vanished together with its owner. No incoming or outgoing activity could be detected, and investigators found no indication that Diana had switched it off herself before disappearing that night after leaving home. To seasoned investigators, such a sudden and total loss of contact suggested something more intentional. Someone seemed to be deliberately disrupting the investigation. By removing the phone, whoever was responsible might have been attempting to gain time while depriving detectives of one of their most valuable sources of evidence. To penetrate that digital silence, investigators decided to produce an emergency duplicate of Diana's SIM card. They required direct access to her call records through the mobile carrier's system. Before long, that digital duplicate would uncover a side of Diana's life she had deliberately concealed from public view. After investigators obtained the call records using the duplicate SIM card, the police technical unit started carefully rebuilding her history of contacts. The carrier data quickly complicated the simple picture Diana's family had always believed. And this was the point where the investigation made one of its most surprising turns. People may share a home for years, utterly certain they understand each other. Yet a basic list of outgoing calls can expose a completely different reality that someone had worked hard to keep hidden. From an outside perspective, Diana's daily life appeared remarkably uncomplicated. In June 2024, she successfully obtained her certification as a grain grader, a serious and highly marketable qualification in Argentina's agriculture-driven provinces. She applied those abilities regularly, working on farmland beside her biological father. During her spare time, she studied astrology, tried her hand at writing, and was regarded as an outgoing, ambitious young woman. Her romantic life appeared equally settled. Diana was officially dating a man her own age named Juan Manuel Stallo. Neither made any attempt to conceal the relationship. They attended local events together and spoke openly about creating a future as a couple. To residents around town, they looked like a stable pair with an obvious future ahead. Diana's family supported the relationship and was sincerely pleased with the man she had selected. Yet the phone records exposed something that did not match that image whatsoever. Investigators found frequent repeated calls involving another number, and it immediately attracted their attention. Police checked registration databases and discovered the subscriber was a local contractor named Norberto Gustavo Brandino, more commonly known throughout the area by his nickname Pino. Brandino was 55 years old then. He had been married for years, lived with his wife, and had an 18-year-old son. He was a big, physically powerful man who had spent years performing strenuous manual labor in the fields. The secret relationship became even more dangerous because of how geographically close everything was. Brandino did not merely reside within the same municipality. He rented a large agricultural storage building situated very near the Mendieta family home. And that leads to an obvious question. How could you maintain a relationship with a married neighbor, a man 33 years older than you, and keep it concealed for any meaningful length of time in a community this small? In communities like this, even anything mildly unusual can rapidly become a subject the entire town discusses. Investigators quietly began questioning people within Diana's social circle, taking care not to attract needless attention. They soon discovered that at least one of her friends was aware of the second relationship. During a formal interview, that friend shared information that immediately altered the case's direction. What initially appeared to be a search for a missing woman was now becoming a criminal investigation with a clear potential motive. According to her statement, the older farmer was extremely unhappy about remaining in the background as Diana's secret partner. Diana's relationship with her younger, publicly acknowledged boyfriend provoked intense jealousy in Brandino. He grew increasingly possessive, insisting on constant attention and wanting to know precisely what she was doing. The circumstances turned into a serious dispute. On one side, Diana maintained an open relationship with a man her own age and the prospect of creating an ordinary future with him. On the other, she was trapped in a secret, progressively controlling relationship with a neighbor who would not accept being relegated to second place. The timing of the call reinforced the friend's account. Contact between Brandino and Diana continued until Friday evening, when she vanished. Investigators now had reason to suspect that Norberto Gustavo Brandino was the final person Diana had communicated with before she posted that unusually intense message and abruptly disappeared from the radar. The next move was clear. Detectives had to visit the 55-year-old man. Later that night, an investigative team reached Brandino's residence carrying an emergency search warrant. At first, the plan was meant to be a firm yet controlled visit, intended to question and examine the missing woman's last known contact. Within seconds, though, events spiraled into an armed standoff with no certainty about how the confrontation might conclude. The officers were now dealing with a developing situation that had moved far beyond a routine investigative visit and into a potentially deadly confrontation, with no easy way out. When officers informed Brandino that they needed to enter the property for the investigation, he categorically refused to cooperate. Even more alarming, he confronted the officers with a firearm in his hands. Consider his response from the viewpoint of someone who has nothing to conceal. Someone confronted by police late at night could be furious. He could request an attorney, dispute the search, protest the intrusion, or immediately begin contacting a lawyer. Yet confronting law enforcement while armed represents a completely different kind of reaction. To investigators, Brandino's extreme response strongly indicated that he knew precisely why officers had arrived at his house. Inside the residence, the situation soon grew dangerously volatile. Initially, Brandino aimed the rifle straight at the officers and threatened to shoot. Then, without warning, he redirected the weapon toward himself. His wife and son were inside the house and witnessed all of this as it unfolded. What followed was a lengthy, highly tense negotiation. Officers cautiously attempted to settle Brandino, persuade him to put down the weapon, and stop the confrontation from producing irreversible consequences. But their efforts to talk him down failed. Eventually, officers had no choice but to move forward and physically restrain him. A major struggle then broke out. Brandino was a powerful man used to years of strenuous physical labor, making him exceptionally difficult to control. Several officers needed multiple long minutes to take the rifle from him, force him onto the floor, and finally place him in handcuffs. After the immediate danger was contained, investigators launched a thorough search of the property. Forensic teams methodically searched the living spaces and located 2 more rifles. Not long afterward, a 3rd firearm was discovered inside the same rented agricultural building near Diana's family home. The complete unregistered collection was promptly confiscated. Investigators also took possession of 2 cell phones belonging to Brandino. To the technical team, those devices might contain some of the case's most important evidence. Both phones were promptly delivered to a forensic laboratory, where specialists began retrieving deleted information and matching it against Diana's phone records. But detectives paid especially close attention to one item on the property: the vehicle sitting in the yard. It was a large white Toyota Hilux pickup truck. A truck of this type has a roomy bed and is built to transport heavy loads over rugged rural terrain. Investigators secured the vehicle and arranged for it to be moved to a secure facility for extensive forensic examination and chemical testing. Brandino was formally charged. At this point in the investigation, the allegations included resisting arrest, unlawful possession of firearms, and threatening police officers. He was taken to custody as the investigation proceeded. Authorities now possessed their main suspect, his communication devices, and his vehicle. They had also obtained substantial physical evidence. But one significant problem remained. Brandino completely withdrew. He refused to respond to investigators' questions and stayed silent as search crews continued moving through the surrounding area, yard by yard. While the farmer remained detained and offered investigators no information, a huge search operation spread across Rosario del Tala. More than 100 people were quickly mobilized to search the area. Police cadets, firefighters, and K-9 teams accompanied by specially trained dogs were assembled into a coordinated search force. Over the nearby farmland, drones fitted with thermal cameras repeatedly scanned the terrain. Meanwhile, ground teams systematically examined every vacant shed, basement, and abandoned structure they could enter. Then, a local television station took an extraordinary step. It started airing footage from municipal surveillance cameras live on television. Residents throughout the town suddenly viewed the same feeds, effectively transforming the whole community into one enormous set of eyes. And this constant tracking of vehicles moving through the area eventually provided investigators with one of their most significant leads. While reviewing surveillance footage from the evening of October 3rd frame by frame, technicians spotted a large vehicle traveling through the area. Multiple street cameras recorded the same white Toyota Hilux pickup, now sealed and held in police custody. The truck appeared traveling through the dark streets during precisely the period when Diana's phone permanently vanished from the cellular network. Consider this through the lens of criminal logic. Whoever was responsible discarded Diana's smartphone, apparently seeking to erase electronic evidence, yet kept driving openly through the area in a large, light-cold, easily recognizable vehicle. It was a textbook planning error. The offender concentrated so intensely on removing one possible problem that he failed to consider how a vehicle this distinctive could leave a substantial visual trail behind him. Police then made a strategically significant decision. They immediately shared information about the truck's route with local media and appealed to residents for assistance. News rapidly spread that investigators wanted anyone who might have noticed the white pickup moving through the area. Almost at once, a local resident contacted police and supplied a precise location. He said he had seen a similar vehicle near an old abandoned farm in a secluded rural area away from the busier roads. Once investigators received the tip, the operation redirected every available resource toward that location. On October 6th, search teams started a methodical step-by-step sweep of the land surrounding the vacant buildings. The decaying structures offered no answers. They were entirely empty. Then an officer spotted something strange about a nearby patch of ground. It simply did not appear natural. Someone had intentionally covered the area layer by layer with broken branches, uprooted tree roots, and a heavy covering of dry leaves. This was not the sort of pile that develops naturally. Someone had obviously placed it there by hand. There was also an important detail concerning how the main evidence had been hidden. Digging a deep hole through hard Argentine soil would take hours of exhausting physical labor and produce a substantial amount of displaced dirt, including dirt on the person carrying out the digging. By using an existing deep structure and rapidly concealing its opening, however, someone could save considerable time and preparation. Officers donned gloves and began cautiously clearing away the improvised camouflage. Under the branches, they found the open shaft of an old dried-up well. Measurements indicated that the shaft was approximately 33 feet deep. A rescue team with specialized climbing equipment was summoned to the scene. One specialist was lowered to the bottom using safety ropes. There, authorities found Diana. One detail immediately became apparent during the first visual examination. Diana was still wearing the same clothes she had been wearing when she left home. She was urgently taken from the bottom of the well to the medical examiner's facility for a complete forensic examination. Specialists began a detailed evaluation and found a serious injury to the temporal bone directly behind her left ear. Considering what investigators had recently recovered while searching Brandino's properties, including 3 rifles, their initial working theory focused on a close-range firearm injury. In cases like this, investigators can easily fall into the trap of connecting evidence recovered during an arrest with injuries discovered during examination and quickly forming a theory around that connection. Yet the forensic examination completely destroyed that convenient explanation. Diana's death resulted from severe head trauma, and the injury had not been caused by a bullet. The attacker had used a blunt, extremely heavy object of some kind, possibly an agricultural tool, and struck her head with tremendous force. The medical examination revealed another significant detail as well. Diana had clear internal injuries consistent with extreme compression of the chest. This allowed experts to reconstruct the physical mechanics of the confrontation. A much larger man appeared to have used his body weight to hold her down, severely limiting her ability to breathe or move. The forensic specialists were equally clear about another point. Diana's death had not been caused by the fall into the deep well. She was already unresponsive when someone placed her inside. To reconstruct the events minute by minute, investigators needed to return to the evening of October 3rd. The basis for that timeline came from evidence recovered inside the seized white pickup truck. When forensic technicians treated the cab with luminol, they discovered what someone had apparently attempted to eliminate through extensive cleaning. Under specialized lighting, previously washed biological traces became visible throughout the interior. Laboratory DNA testing left no remaining doubt. The blood belonged to Diana. Investigators determined that the confrontation between Brandino and Diana occurred inside the truck near the passenger seat. An attempt to discuss their relationship, or perhaps bring the secret affair to an end, seemed to have quickly escalated into uncontrolled violence. Within the confined vehicle, Diana had little room to protect herself against a physically powerful man accustomed to strenuous manual labor every day. By synchronizing call records obtained through Diana's duplicate SIM card with information recovered from the suspect's personal phones, the technical team could reconstruct the journey from the meeting point to the abandoned farmland. What stood out was the speed of the entire sequence. From the fatal confrontation through transporting Diana and hiding what had happened, the complete sequence lasted less than half an hour. In roughly 30 minutes, the person responsible committed the crime, drove to the isolated farm, put Diana inside the well, concealed the opening beneath a thick layer of branches, and drove away once more. Location data and traffic camera footage showed that he completed the entire sequence alone, without assistance from anyone else. After departing the farm, Brandino went back to the car belonging to Diana's mother. He drove it to the dirt road and left it there. This detail revealed a great deal to investigators about his state of mind at that point. After abandoning someone else's vehicle in plain view, he did not even take the keys out of the ignition. He seemed so certain that nobody had witnessed him that he made almost no attempt to make the abandoned car itself more difficult to locate or enter. That degree of confidence is especially telling. Later, Brandino goes back to his own property that evening, enters the house he shares with his wife and son, retires to bed, and continues his usual routine as if nothing had occurred. Once the suspect is moved to a detention facility, the residents of Rosario del Tala finally start grasping the full magnitude of what took place. The town's main streets soon become crowded with stunned local residents, shocked by the revelation. Large nighttime marches are arranged, with people holding candles and signs demanding justice from local authorities. Locals call for justice for Diana and accountability from a man many had spent decades greeting in shops or working beside in nearby fields. Diana's family, meanwhile, entirely withdraws from the sudden surge of public attention. On October 16th, they conduct a private funeral and strictly bar reporters, camera crews, and other outsiders from entering, giving relatives the chance to say goodbye away from the press. Meanwhile, prosecutors start compiling a substantial body of evidence for court. The original charges concerning illegal firearm possession and resisting police are quickly eclipsed by a much more grave allegation. Norberto Gustavo Brandino is officially charged with aggravated homicide classified as femicide. Under the area's legal framework, that designation covers a fatal offense against a woman associated with gender-based domination and aggression. During official questioning and early court proceedings, Brandino maintains the same approach. He declines to speak. He gives no explanation, makes no effort to defend his conduct, and says nothing on his own behalf. He invokes his right to remain silent throughout the proceedings. The case subsequently becomes caught in the lengthy process of preparing a major criminal trial. In December, a judge delivers the first order prolonging Brandino's detention. His custody is later prolonged again, while prosecutors await the final findings from complicated technical, forensic, and biological examinations. As of August 2026, no final verdict has been issued. Prosecutors continue developing the case step by step, seeking to remove possible weaknesses that the defense might challenge at trial. They are preparing to request a sentence of life imprisonment with no possibility of early release. This case demonstrates how deceptive the feeling of safety within a quiet farming community can be. People often assume that in places like Rosario del Tala, everybody knows everybody else, and nothing remains concealed for long. Yet even within such a small community, an intensely possessive relationship can grow behind the closed doors of someone regarded by everyone as an ordinary neighbor. A grown man used to controlling others appears to have persuaded himself that he was entitled to eliminate the problem after realizing he was losing his influence over another person's life, and the secrecy surrounding Diana's relationship ultimately benefited the offender. By concealing what was happening between them from her family, Diana unknowingly created an information gap around that portion of her life. Those closest to her had no reason to recognize the possible danger because they were unaware that the relationship existed. If that destructive relationship had become known even one day before the Friday night meeting in the pickup, there is a strong chance that what happened afterward might have been stopped. Brandino would have lost one of the most important advantages he appeared to rely on during the encounter itself. For 4 days, the country was searching for the killer of a man in his 20s. The bones pointed straight there. The measurements did the same. Every thread of the investigation led in that direction. No such man had ever existed. The remains spread across 19 miles of mountain road belonged to a 61-year-old retired hospital cleaner. And she had already been dead for 11 days. Dead since the evening her granddaughter herself put on her coat, grabbed her suitcase, and stepped through the front door instead. Patricia O'Connor was born in May 1956, one of 13 children in a Kilkenny family where privacy was scarce at home and waste was avoided. She had reached 61 just 10 days before she died. She came to Dublin as thousands of women from the Midlands had done before her, for steady employment, for a paycheck, for a life that did not depend on somebody else's land. She married Augustine O'Connor, a quiet man known to everyone as Gus, and they made their permanent home in Rathfarnham on the city's southern edge where the suburbs end and the Dublin mountains start. They had 2 children, Richard first, then Louise. For most of her adult working life, Patricia cleaned wards at Beaumont Hospital on the city's north side. It is worth considering what that work actually involved day to day. 12-hour shifts, bleach and floor polish, bodily fluids belonging to strangers. Corridors cleaned at 4:00 in the morning while machines thudded behind curtains. She did it for decades and retired in 2016, 1 year, as it turned out, before the end. She was never a soft woman, and those who loved her never claimed otherwise. She was blunt. She held strong opinions about how a house should be maintained, and she expressed them. She could cut you down with a single sentence. Her family recalled friction, arguments, a temper that flared quickly and disappeared quickly. There was another fracture in her past that later emerged in court from her son. Patricia had left the family home when Richard was 10 years old. He was not abandoned. He maintained his relationship with his mother, visited her, remained quite close to her in his own way. But she had been gone from that house for years. Then, several years later, she returned to it, not to a marriage exactly, but to an address. When Patricia came back to the home she shared with Gus, the husband and wife occupied separate bedrooms, and that arrangement never altered. They lived beside one another for the remainder of her life, much like 2 long-term tenants might. Polite, practical, over. That is the first thing to understand about the house at Mountain View Park. It was already holding an old fault line before anyone else moved in. The second thing is the simple numbers. It was an ordinary suburban house, modest in size, a narrow driveway out front, a small rear garden, a downstairs bathroom off the hall. The kind of house built in the 1960s for a couple and 2 or 3 children. By 2017, 9 people were living there. Patricia and Gus, their daughter Louise, Louise's partner, Kieran Green, the 3 young children Louise and Green had together, and Louise's 2 older children from her previous relationship with a man named Keith Johnston. The eldest among them was Stephanie, a 22-year-old woman. 9 people, 1 kitchen, 1 small bathroom downstairs. Every bedroom was shared. Adults in their 30s and 40s had no bedroom of their own where they could shut a door, and no realistic chance of securing one because Dublin rents had soared and nobody in that house earned enough to get out. Richard said it plainly during his evidence. The house was tightly packed, crowded beyond comfort. There was considerable friction inside it, and much of it centered directly on the upkeep of the house itself. Louise's family lived there, and the property was not maintained to the standard his mother expected. That was the entire dispute, expressed plainly in ordinary domestic language. A woman who had professionally scrubbed floors for 30 years living in a home she could no longer control, surrounded by people who had no way of leaving. Kieran Green entered that house around 2007 and never left. He was only in his early 20s at the time. By spring 2017, he was 34, a father of 3, and had spent an entire decade sleeping beneath his partner's mother's roof. 10 years of eating at her kitchen table, bathing in her bathroom, parking in her driveway. 10 years of being, in the precise legal and social sense, a guest. He owned no property, had no standing, and had no room that was truly his own. Every dispute he lost on someone else's floor. Louise was the household's connective tissue. Patricia's daughter, Green's partner, mother of 5. 2 of those 5 children came from her earlier relationship with Keith Johnston, and Johnston had never completely disappeared from the picture. He was 43, lived in Tallaght, and came and went from Mountain View Park like a sort of family fixture. He regularly did jobs around the house. He was, in the phrase later used from the bench, a trusted member of the extended family. That trust matters here because it becomes important later. Stephanie was 22, Johnston's daughter, Louise's eldest, Patricia's granddaughter. She had grown up in that house. She was working in retail at the time. She used a laptop borrowed by half the household. By every visible measure, she was a young woman standing at the ordinary threshold of an ordinary life. And then there were the 3 small children, and Gus in his separate room at 76. And Patricia moving through everything with a mop and a remark. What the house looked like from inside depended entirely on who you asked. Both versions were later given under oath. Richard's account was mundane and credible. His mother was house proud. His sister's family were not maintaining the place. There were arguments about it. Ordinary intergenerational friction, intensified because nobody could leave and cool down, since there was nowhere to go. Green's account was different. He told detectives that life in Mountain View Park was a nightmare. He said Patricia could be verbally abusive. He said she singled out the children. In his account, he cast her as something approaching a domestic tyrant, a woman who wanted all of them gone, and whom he claimed had threatened to have his family killed. He went further still. He told them he believed she had tried to kill Gus by pushing him down the stairs. None of that was ever corroborated. No independent witness, no complaint, no report, nothing. It emerged only afterwards, from one man, at the very moment when he needed an explanation. But it shows what was building inside his mind, and that buildup is the mechanism here. This is not a case involving a stranger, a scheme, or money. It concerns a man in his mid-30s who had been quietly humiliated by his living circumstances for a decade, and who had transformed his mother-in-law, in his own mind, into the one barrier between himself and a life. 10 years is a long time to grind down resentment. By 2017, it was honed. The final few days remained completely ordinary and largely uneventful. Late May, long evenings, the Dublin mountains still visible in the light at 9, the children moving in and out of the back garden, the familiar household friction over the same familiar nothing as always. At one point, later recounted to Gardaí, there was an argument involving the family cat. Monday, the 29th of May, 2017, was a bank holiday. The property stayed crowded throughout the day. During the afternoon, Louise and Stephanie brought some of the children to a Tesco in Nutgrove and returned at about 9. People moved through the back garden, entering and leaving via the side of the house. It was the normal movement created by too many people occupying too little space. Earlier that same day, a security camera at the property captured Patricia O'Connor in the front garden. She had on a floral dress. She was outside her own home in the early summer light, occupied with something minor and easily forgotten. At 6:35 that evening, the same camera recorded her returning from the back garden through the rear entrance of the house. That became the final image. 61 years old, retired 11 months, walking through her own back door. No one beyond that building would ever see Patricia O'Connor alive again. The downstairs bathroom at Mountain View Park was tiny. That fact matters more than anything else in this case. It was a room opening off the hall. Hard surfaces surrounded it on every side. Tile, porcelain, a door swinging inward and consuming half the usable floor space. Two adults could not pass one another in that room without one turning sideways. That was where it occurred. Sometime after 6:35 p.m., Patricia and Kieran Green found themselves together inside that bathroom. There was an argument. Its subject has never been established and almost certainly made no difference. After 10 years, what starts an argument becomes nothing more than the excuse. Green later claimed that she came toward him carrying a hurley. A hurley is not a decorative object in an Irish home. It is about 3 feet of ash, flat-bladed at one end, weighted and hard like a hammer. Half the houses across the country have one resting somewhere. He said she hit him with it. He claimed he took it away from her. He said he struck her several times in return, and that she fell. That was not what the pathology revealed. Patricia O'Connor suffered at least 3 blows to the head from a solid implement. The strikes were delivered with enough force to produce what prosecutors would later describe as catastrophic injuries. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. The assault continued. The state's case placed its duration at up to 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Consider that number. Not an instant, not a reflex, not a hand lashing out in panic before immediate regret. 20 minutes inside a room no bigger than a wardrobe with a woman who weighed a fraction of his weight, and with neither person having an easy exit. There was another finding that permanently destroyed his version of events. Not one defensive injury. None. No broken forearms, no injuries to the hands, nothing across the palms. When someone is being struck and retains any ability to defend themselves, the arms rise. It is automatic. The body reacts before anyone can think about it. Patricia's arms never rose. Whatever the initial blow had been, it removed her ability to fight before any fight could begin. Everything that followed was inflicted on a woman unable to raise a hand. Green told Garda E that he had been angry while striking her. Not afraid, angry. Then the sounds ceased, while the house remained standing, still crowded with people. This is the point that distinguishes this killing from other domestic murders. Because at that moment, around 7 on a bank holiday Monday, with 3 small children somewhere inside the property, the normal chain of events should have followed. A scream, a telephone, an ambulance. 9 people, at least 4 adults among them, and a landline in the hall. No one called anybody. Instead, within a couple of hours, what began was an exercise in administration. The bathroom needed to be dealt with. The body needed to be removed from a home with neighbors on both sides and a security camera covering the front of the property. And Patricia's disappearance, involving a woman with a son, brothers, sisters, and an entire extended family who would call her, required an explanation before anyone thought to demand one. The first 2 problems were physical. Green dealt with them. The third was social. That required somebody else. Patricia's body did not leave the house that night. It could not. People were still awake along the road. Daylight remained in the sky until almost 10. The granddaughter still came through the side gate at 5:10, and the elderly man still walked his dog up the driveway at 20 past. At 11, Gus and Louise stood behind the house talking before going inside. The camera continued recording. At 12:39 a.m., 39 minutes into the 30th of May, Kieran Green emerged from the left side of the house carrying 2 long-handled objects. Nobody confronted him. No one from inside came to the door. Nobody questioned why he was outside at 12:30 in the morning. During the hours that followed, Patricia O'Connor was placed into the boot of a car, not a van, not some borrowed vehicle, but her own Toyota Corolla, parked outside her own home, the car she used for shopping. Green then drove south, leaving Dublin, passing through Wicklow and Wexford, more than 100 miles from Rathfarnham, toward a field in the flat farmland between the villages of Kilmacridge and Curracloe, coastal country, sand beneath the topsoil, hedgerows, and no streetlights. He carried no proper tools with him. He dug the grave using a stick in his bare hands. It was shallow. It was inevitably going to be shallow. Alone in darkness, a man scraped at a field with his fingers, racing against time and sunrise. He placed her inside, covered the body, and then drove the 100-odd miles north again to Rathfarnham. Afterwards, he told detectives what he had felt once it was finished. He said he felt free. He said his children would now be safe. He said their grandmother could no longer pick on them. That is the psychology of this case in 3 sentences, spoken by the man himself. There was no remorse, no horror. He had resolved a housing problem. At Mountain View Park, meanwhile, the second part of the operation was already in motion, and it had started 3 hours before he ever drove away from the driveway. At 9:34 p.m. on 29th of May, the camera outside the front of the house captured someone coming down the driveway. A dark green coat, dark trousers, hood raised, pulled forward far enough to conceal the face and hair. A black suitcase was carried in one hand. The figure moved quickly, not exactly rushing, but certainly not lingering. It turned left at the end of the driveway and disappeared. 31 minutes later, at 10:05 p.m., a woman carrying a suitcase appeared beside the left side of that same house and entered through the back door. 1 minute later, the rear door shut. 2 recordings, 90 seconds of footage altogether. They became the backbone of the prosecution because the person leaving the front of the house was supposed to be Patricia O'Connor, storming away after an argument with her suitcase, alive, upright, and moving under her own power at 9:30 on a bank holiday evening. It was Stephanie, 22 years old, dressed in her grandmother's clothes. The prosecution's theory depended on a piece of reasoning so straightforward it required almost no argument. Throughout the evening's entire footage, Stephanie O'Connor is never seen leaving that house as Stephanie. She enters through the back at 10:10. She does not emerge through the front. The sole person seen leaving is the hooded figure carrying the suitcase, and by then Patricia was already dead inside the property. The state described it as a ruse. Prosecuting counsel later called it a charade and explained its exact purpose. It was not designed to deceive anyone inside the house. Everyone there knew the truth. It was created for the record. The intention was to place an image on a hard drive that could later be produced if somebody came asking questions. Black and white proof that the elderly woman had been alive, and had left voluntarily. It was insurance, recorded within 3 hours of the killing, and for a time it worked because a story came with it. That same evening, Louise telephoned her brother Richard. She told him their mother had left, that an argument had taken place, and that Patricia had grabbed a bag before storming out. She also repeated something she claimed their mother had said over her shoulder as she departed, that she would return when the old fellow popped his clogs. It was a minor, cruel, perfectly selected detail because it sounded precisely like Patricia. It resembled something a sharp-tongued woman might genuinely say about a husband with whom she had shared an address, and little else, for years. Richard heard the story, and it made sense. His mother had walked away from a house before. Everyone in the family knew that history, so the explanation did not need to be flawless. It simply needed to sound believable to people who already knew part of the story. That was what the household relied upon for the next 3 days. The conflict was genuine, the temper was genuine, her history of leaving was genuine. All they needed was for others to complete the missing pieces themselves. Meanwhile, the phone calls began. Patricia had been one of 13 children. She had brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews, relatives in Kilkenny, and another circle in Dublin. She was not someone who simply disappeared without notice. Her phone stopped being answered. Her son called. Family members called one another, while the household repeated the same explanation. She stormed out. She'll cool down. She'll come home. Tuesday passed, then Wednesday. Somewhere in a Wexford field, roughly 120 miles away, soil had already been disturbed by hand. Richard was the person who kept pressing. He wanted his mother reported missing. His sister did not. He later told the court that Louise did not want to involve the guards, and that he had to keep insisting. Consider what that meant for him. He was the only immediate family member who was outside the secret. Every instinct was telling him something was wrong, while the people urging him to calm down, wait a few days, and stop overreacting were his own sister and his own father. Richard continued pushing until eventually the household had no more room to refuse. On the 1st of June 2017, 4 days after the killing, Augustine O'Connor entered Rathfarnham Garda station and reported his wife of many years missing. He knew she was dead. He had known that since the night she was killed. A 76-year-old man sat across from a guard, supplied his wife's name, age, description, and last known clothing. then allowed the state to create a missing persons file for a woman whose body was lying inside a hole in a field in County Wexford. The judge who later sentenced him used a word rarely heard in Irish courtrooms. He said Gus O'Connor had acted disgracefully. He said he had betrayed his wife. That report marked the point when the cover-up ceased being panic and became something colder. Panic lasts an hour. Panic is the bloodied bathroom, the journey south, the digging with a stick. This happened 4 days later, in daylight, inside a police station, before a witness with a signature. And by then, the household had already turned its attention toward another problem. Kieran Green was becoming concerned about just how shallow the grave actually was. A hand-dug grave in coastal farmland is barely a grave. It is a delay. Green understood that. The field sat between two villages, in an area where farmers walked their land, dogs wandered loose, and the topsoil was thin. In darkness, he had covered Patricia with whatever material he could scrape together. Each passing day made the disturbed earth easier to notice, rather than harder. So the decision was made to return for her. But returning created an obstacle he had not faced the first time. One man could move a body once, intact, using a car boot and a long night. Moving it again from a field 120 miles away, then disposing of it somewhere it would never be discovered, demanded equipment. It also demanded assistance. On the 5th of June, a camera at a home base in Nutgrove recorded Green entering the store at 10 to 2 in the afternoon. 12 minutes later, he was back at Mountain View Park, walking up the driveway behind Keith Johnston, who was carrying a bucket of paint. The paint was intended for the bathroom. Between 31st May and 9th June, the downstairs bathroom at Mountain View Park underwent refurbishment. It was stripped, worked on, and redecorated. In a home where 9 people lived packed together, and where nothing had met Patricia's standards for years, one small room suddenly received a complete makeover. It began 2 days after her death inside the precise room where she had died. Johnston's position, both at the time and afterwards, was that he was simply a handyman completing work for the family. He denied that the renovations had anything to do with hiding evidence. Then came June 9th. That afternoon, Green and Johnston went shopping together in Tallaght. Not a single store. 4. Woody's Barbecue, Mr. Price Shoe Zone. Between them, they purchased hacksaws, blades, a hatchet, heavy black plastic bags, and footwear. Every stop was captured on camera. 2 men moving through the aisles of DIY stores on an ordinary Friday afternoon in South Dublin, filling a basket. No disguises, no urgency. It was the most ordinary footage imaginable, and also the most damaging, because when detectives later placed the receipts alongside the pathologist's report, the shopping list read like a specification. When Gardaí confronted Johnston with the claim that Green had purchased the exact tools needed to dismember a body, he did not back down. He called them lying swines. He maintained that he had not connected the pieces. He said he had no idea what any of the purchases were intended for. The jury rejected his account, and it took them more than 12 hours to reach that conclusion. That same day, the 2 men drove south to Wexford and reopened the ground. What took place in that field lasted between 3 and 4 hours. The details do not need to be dwelt upon, and they will not be. The remains of Patricia O'Connor were cut into 15 separate parts with 2 hacksaws and a hatchet, outdoors in a field, by men taking turns as exhaustion set in. Her head and both hands were put together inside one black plastic bag. The body parts carrying her identity were kept apart from the rest. Those identifying remains were intentionally kept apart, as though the killers understood that separating them would make recognition harder and slow the work of anyone trying to establish exactly who the victim was. Green's version and Johnston's version of who actually carried out the cutting never agreed, and they never would. Only one fact about that argument is certain. What was recovered from the field was placed in a vehicle and transported north. Not back to Dublin, though, to the mountains above the city. The old military road stretches from Dublin's southern edge through the Wicklow uplands. A single-track route constructed 2 centuries ago so soldiers could enter country otherwise inaccessible to them. Bog on either side. Sheep. Deep channels filled with black peat water. Long vacant stretches between bends where you can see 3 miles of nothing. Along that road, across roughly 19 miles, the 15 parts were abandoned at 9 separate locations. Glencree, Lough Bray, Glen Macnass Waterfall, Old Bowley near the Sally Gap. Some were thrown over roadside banks. Some were placed in water. Others were left on open ground. The distribution was intentional, and it was calculated. No individual discovery would reveal anything. A fragment on a Wicklow mountainside is just a fragment. It might be a decade old. It might belong to an animal. It might be anything. The separation between locations was intended to ensure that even if one was discovered, it would never point toward another. Afterwards, the tools were discarded into undergrowth at a park in Talak. The clothes were burned, and the men returned home. At Mountain View Park, meanwhile, the bathroom now had fresh paint. Patricia O'Connor's missing persons file remained open at Rathfarnham Station, going nowhere. A 61-year-old woman with a temper had left her family. It happens. 10 days had gone by since anyone outside that house had seen her. Nobody was searching the mountains. Saturday, June 10th. Early evening, still light, with the sort of long summer brightness that draws half of Dublin into the hills. A family stopped for a picnic near the Sally Gap at a place called Old Bawley. One member, Christine Murphy, walked toward the roadside bank and noticed something lying beneath it. She examined it and assumed it was animal remains. That response was neither squeamish nor naive. In that landscape, it was the natural instinct. The Wicklow uplands are active sheep country. Carcasses regularly appear along the roadside. Foxes, lambs, deer, things carried off by birds. What lay inside that ditch did not look human, because nothing in the surroundings suggested that it was human. It was a torso. That same day, several miles away at Glendalough Waterfall, two walkers saw what they believed were animal organs resting on a rock above the falls. Two different groups of ordinary people on an ordinary Saturday, both staring directly at a murder victim, and both mentally categorizing it as wildlife. By nightfall, the mountains were sealed off. Over the next 4 days came one of the largest recovery operations ever conducted in that terrain. Uniformed Gardaí, detectives, the Garda Water Unit, Defense Forces personnel, roughly 19 miles of mountain road closed. Divers searched the pitch-black pools beneath Glen Macnas. Soldiers advanced in lines through heather and bog cotton. Search teams covered the Vartry River. Helicopters circled overhead. 15 parts were recovered from those hills between the 10th and the 14th of June, across 9 locations scattered along that 19-mile arc. Yet during the investigation's first several days, investigators were pursuing an entirely wrong identity. The first bone measurements produced a profile. Long bones, proportions, the usual forensic calculations used to estimate height and build, then sex and age. The result pointed to a male in his 20s. Every operational assumption followed from that. Detectives started searching through the world of a young man. The unreported disappearances, the connections, the debts, the prospect that this was organized crime settling a score. Dismemberment and scattering across mountain roads bears a very specific signature in Ireland. And it is not a domestic pattern. It is the signature of people who do this professionally. So the investigation moved that way. Missing young men were checked. The mountains were viewed as a disposal site selected by professionals. Nobody linked it to the file sitting at Rathfarnham Station 12 miles down the road about a retired hospital cleaner who had stormed out with a suitcase. Why would they? Wrong sex. Wrong age by 40 years. Wrong kind of victim entirely. That is the cruelty of this stage of the investigation, and it was manufactured not by the killers who could not have predicted it, but by the act of dismembering itself, splitting a body into 15 pieces and scatter them over 19 miles. And the first thing destroyed is not identity, it is context. A whole person tells you who they were. A fragment tells you almost nothing, and what it does tell you may be wrong. Meanwhile, the community around those roads absorbed something it could not comprehend. Wicklow depends on those mountains. Walkers, cyclists, tourists bound for Glendalough, families driving up for the view. In the second week of June, all of it halted. Roads that carry weekend traffic all summer were staffed by uniforms sending cars back. Locals watched soldiers working the ditches outside their gates. Reporters gathered at the cordon lines. And down in Kilkenny among Patricia's brothers and sisters, the news was merely something on the radio. A body in the Dublin mountains, awful business. Some young man, they were saying. None of them connected it to the sister who had gone silent. Then, the black plastic bag was recovered. A few miles from Glen Macnas. Inside it were a head and 2 hands. Everything changed at once. The bag gave the pathologist a face and a jaw and dental structure. The one thing that identifies someone absolutely and immediately, without waiting weeks for DNA. On the 13th of June, records were checked and a positive dental identification followed. Gardaí confirmed publicly on the 14th. The victim in the mountains was not a man in his 20s. She was Patricia O'Connor, 61 of Mountain View Park, Rathfarnham, reported missing by her own husband 12 days earlier. The former deputy state pathologist, Dr. Michael Curtis, completed the post-mortem examination across the recovered remains and delivered findings that would anchor the trial. A minimum of 3 blows to the head with a solid implement, death by blunt force trauma, and no defensive injuries anywhere on the body. The investigation swung through 180 degrees within one afternoon. This was not gangland. This was not a young man who had crossed the wrong people. This was a grandmother, and the last address she had been seen at was a house with 9 people in it. But by the time detectives were ready to walk up that driveway, someone had already saved them the trouble. While body parts were still being recovered from the Wicklow bog, a man had entered Rathfarnham Garda station and asked to speak. Kieran Green did not wait for investigators. He turned himself in at Rathfarnham Garda station and told Garda I that he had killed his partner's mother. He gave them the bathroom. He gave them the argument. He told them Patricia had hit him with a hurley, that he had struck her back several times, and that she had fallen. Self-defense. That was his position from the outset, and he never left it. Then he offered investigators something they could not refuse. He said he could show them where he had buried her. On the 13th of June, 2 detectives, David Connolly and Kieran O'Neill, drove him out of Dublin and south into Wexford. He was cooperating voluntarily. He sat in the car for nearly 2 hours, providing directions to a field between Kilmacurrach and Curracloe, while the detectives beside him already knew what had been recovered from the Wicklow Mountains for the previous 3 days. He brought them to a farm gate and was told to wait there. The detectives entered and found the disturbed soil. In the shallow hollow, they found brown hair. At 7:30 that evening, standing by that gate in an empty field 120 miles from his home, Kieran Green was arrested for murder. Over the interviews that followed, he outlined the version of Patricia O'Connor he had been building for a decade. The misery of that house, the verbal abuse, the threats, his belief that she had pushed Gus down the stairs, his claim that she wanted all of them dead, including the children, and the statement that told detectives exactly what they were facing, that once he buried her, he felt free. When he was officially charged, he was asked if he had anything to add. He said it was self-defense. That should have ended it. It was not, because 6 months later, he undermined his own account. In December 2017, on remand in Clover Hill Prison, Green requested another Gardaí interview. He now had another story. In this one, he had taken the blame. He said Patricia had attacked him with the hurley and he had fallen. He said that while he was on the floor, her husband came into the bathroom, turned on his wife, and demanded an explanation. And then, according to Green, Augustine O'Connor, 76 years old, killed his wife with a crowbar. Green said he had accepted the blame for it. He said he had confessed to a murder he did not commit, buried the body, dismembered it, scattered it across 19 miles of mountain, and sat in a cell for 6 months, all to protect the old man. And he explained why he was withdrawing it now. Because Louise had begun seeing Keith Johnston again. That is the entire structure of the second story, obvious from its foundations. It was not driven by conscience or by fresh evidence. It was produced by the moment he decided he was being framed, that he was bearing the burden alone, while back in Dublin his partner had gone back to her ex. The problem was that the second story did not match the body. A hurley in the hands of a 61-year-old woman cannot explain a victim with no defensive injuries. A frail man of 76 with a crowbar cannot explain a prolonged assault of up to 20 minutes, and nothing in the account explained why the man who had supposedly walked in on a killing was the one who drove her south that night, dug the grave by hand, went back 9 days later with hacksaws, and told detectives, before he had any reason to pretend, that he had been angry while he was hitting her. The jury rejected it outright. What they accepted was the prosecution's case, that Green held a particular hostility toward Patricia O'Connor, that he inflicted catastrophic injuries on her in that bathroom, and that his claim of self-defense, as counsel put it, did not withstand scrutiny. By then, he was no longer alone in the dock. Gardaí had spent the next 2 years dismantling the household story. The recordings from the front of the house, the laptop, the telephone records, the CCTV from 4 shops in Tallaght, the interviews in which Stephanie was shown the figure with the suitcase, and told detectives she thought it could be her, that she was not completely sure, that it had been ages ago. In October 2018, 4 members of Patricia O'Connor's own family were charged with obstructing the apprehension or prosecution of the man who killed her. The trial began at the Central Criminal Court in January 2020 and continued for 7 weeks. Gus O'Connor never appeared before the jury. Days before it began, the 76-year-old pleaded guilty to reporting his wife missing while knowing she was dead. The verdicts followed on 4 consecutive days at the end of February. Green, guilty of murder. Stephanie, guilty of posing as her grandmother to conceal the death. Louise, guilty of agreeing to the deception. Johnston, guilty after more than 12 hours of deliberation, while still insisting he had bought those tools in ignorance. Sentencing was delayed until June by the pandemic. Green received a life sentence. The judge described the dismemberment as grotesque and said Johnston had intended that the remains never be found. 3 years. Louise, whose culpability the court deemed substantial, 3 years with the final 6 months suspended. Stephanie, 2 years with 6 months suspended. Gus, 18 months, reduced from a stated 3 for his plea, his remorse, and an otherwise blameless life. Mr. Justice McDermott's language for the family was strikingly direct, shocking, callous, a profound betrayal. On June 22nd, Richard O'Connor read out the victim impact statement. Richard O'Connor was the only member of that household who was given a lie and believed it. He was also the one who continued pressing until his mother's name was finally recorded in a Garda station. Everything the court condemned rested on one fact. 4 people had 11 days to make a phone call. None of them did. They painted a bathroom instead. They filmed a woman with a suitcase. And they allowed a family in Kilkenny hear on the radio that some young man had been found in the mountains. Patricia O'Connor was 61. She had been retired 11 months. She never walked away from that house. Lauren Burke was born on August 11, 1989 in Marietta, Georgia. She was the youngest among 3 children, and from a very early age, Lauren had a way to make people feel at ease. She was kind, open, and easy to talk to, and people felt at ease around her. She was the kind of person who could get along with almost anyone and always tried to help people around her. During high school, she became involved in athletics and became interested in lacrosse, which soon became a favorite. Yet Lauren had a creative side too. When she thought about her future, she wanted a path that let her use that part of herself. She eventually chose graphic design and enrolled in Auburn University in Alabama. The school was about 2 hours away from her family home, so Lauren could still visit her parents often. Her older sister was attending the university then, which mattered a lot to Lauren at the time. Having a family member close by made the change feel easier during those early days at college. Lauren had a boyfriend named Sean, whom she started dating in high school, and he enrolled in the same university too. From her first weeks at college, Lauren made new friends too, and met more people back then, joined the lacrosse squad, and slowly settled into student life, getting used to her surroundings as the semester moved along. She lived in an off-campus dorm, while her boyfriend stayed in a residence hall on university grounds. On March 4, 2008, when she was 18, Lauren visited Sean at his dorm. Afterward, she planned to go to the library, where she was supposed to study with her friends later that night. At around 8-9 p.m., Lauren said goodbye to her boyfriend and walked to the parking lot where she left her car. About an hour later, at 9:08 p.m., police received a call. A witness driving along the highway near town reported seeing a young woman standing in the road. She had no clothes on at all, and the witness believed she looked injured then. After that, several more 911 calls came from the same area. People reported an injured young woman on the road, crying and waving at passing cars, while some callers even said they heard gunshots. Within 4 minutes of the first call, an officer who was nearby arrived at the scene. He saw a young woman lying in the middle of the road. Her body was covered by a jacket, and she showed no obvious signs of life. Some witnesses were trying to help her, while others had used their cars to block the road and stop traffic. The officer began giving first aid, and paramedics arrived a few minutes later. They found that the young woman was barely breathing, but she still had a faint pulse. As she was loaded into the ambulance, officers saw blood on her body and a wound that looked like it may have been caused by a gunshot. Doctors confirmed that she had suffered at least one gunshot wound. The bullet had passed through the side of her body, apparently damaging both lungs. Despite everything the medical team did to save her, the young woman died. Since she had nothing on except socks, and there was no purse or ID nearby, investigators had no idea who she was. Detectives began checking missing persons reports, while other officers tried to understand what had happened on that road. There were no surveillance cameras in the area, so for now, everything still depended entirely on witnesses in those days. Several people told police the same thing they had already told the 911 dispatcher when the calls first came in. They had been traveling along the road when they saw a young woman with no clothes on, crying, waving her arms and clearly injured. Some of them chose to turn back, pulling into a church parking lot so they could reverse direction. Yet when they reached the section of road where they had spotted her, she was already lying there. The witnesses positioned their cars across the lane to keep approaching vehicles from hitting her, then called 911. However, just one of them went directly to the young woman and attempted to assist her. The scene quickly became dangerous because the woman was lying directly in the roadway, leaving the witnesses concerned that another passing vehicle could strike her. They therefore acted quickly, trying to protect her while waiting for emergency assistance. Despite the number of motorists present, the crucial moments leading to her arrival on the road remained unexplained to everyone there still. Although many cars had been traveling along that road, none of the motorists saw how she ended up there. Several people reported hearing gunshots, but nobody actually saw the shooting. Even so, police received one significant clue. Remember those drivers who turned around in the church parking lot? They told officers that a black Honda had been stopped near the exit, with its passenger door completely open and obstructing their path. The driver remained there for several seconds, then shut the door and quickly drove away. While officers continued gathering statements from witnesses, another 911 call arrived. This one concerned a fire outside one of the university dormitories. When firefighters reached the scene, they discovered a black Honda burning in the parking lot. Because witnesses had noticed a similar vehicle near the spot where the young woman was shot, detectives immediately linked the two locations. After checking the license plate, they discovered the vehicle belonged to a man named Jim Burke. Police contacted him, and he explained that although the car was registered under his name, his daughter Lauren had been driving it. He also told them she attended Auburn University. Detectives immediately began considering whether she might have been the young woman who died along the road. They asked Jim to come to Auburn, and several hours later, he confirmed that the victim was indeed Lauren. Once investigators identified her, they started rebuilding the events of that evening, hoping to determine exactly what had happened. After talking with her boyfriend, detectives learned Lauren had left his dorm around 8 p.m. Her vehicle was parked nearby, and she was expected to drive to the library where her friends were waiting, but she never arrived. Soon, her friends became concerned and tried reaching her by phone, but Lauren did not respond. Later, she finally answered a call from one of her friends. He asked why she had not yet arrived at the library. Lauren quickly replied that she had forgotten their plans. When he asked whether she wanted to postpone their study session until the following day, she answered, "I don't know." Then she ended the call. It sounded as though Lauren was inside the car. At the time, however, neither her boyfriend nor her friends considered the conversation particularly unusual. Meanwhile, the medical examiner confirmed investigators' earlier suspicion. Lauren had been shot. The bullet traveled through both lungs, resulting in severe internal bleeding. With an injury that serious, she had very little chance of survival. But that was not the only discovery. Her body was also covered with abrasions. Experts believed she might have jumped from a moving vehicle. Inside her black Honda, which had been almost completely burned, investigators discovered a .38 caliber bullet, along with clothing remnants that appeared to belong to Lauren and several other personal belongings. Detectives then began developing a basic theory about what might have occurred. Most likely, an unknown attacker abducted Lauren after she left her boyfriend's dorm and walked toward her car. Perhaps he had been waiting nearby, or perhaps he somehow entered the vehicle. Afterward, he may have threatened her with a gun, taken control of the car, and driven her away from town. Since roughly an hour passed between Lauren leaving the dorm and the first 911 call, the attacker must have spent some time driving her around or remaining somewhere in a parking lot. The direct drive from the dorm to where Lauren was discovered would have taken no more than 15 minutes. Because Lauren was wearing nothing except her socks, detectives initially considered whether the attacker had sexually assaulted her, but the medical examiner found no evidence of such an assault. Investigators therefore considered another possibility. Perhaps he intended to assault her and was taking her somewhere secluded, but Lauren managed to leap from the vehicle. He may have shot her in the back when she opened the passenger door, yet even after being wounded, she still managed to escape the car. Regarding her vehicle, investigators believe the attacker most likely drove it back to campus before setting it ablaze in an attempt to destroy evidence. For Auburn residents, the incident came as a devastating shock. The town had a reputation for being extremely safe, and murders were almost unheard of there. The university was central to life in Auburn, with nearly 25,000 students, and now everyone was concerned about personal safety. Making matters even more difficult, police had no clear idea who might have committed the crime, while the local department faced intense pressure as national news organizations began reporting on the case. A social media group started by Auburn students attracted around 10,000 members in under a day following Lauren's death. In response, police decided to seek assistance from additional agencies. During the earliest hours, the FBI, state police, the U.S. Marshal Service, and the county sheriff's office all became involved in the investigation. Among the first individuals detectives examined was Lauren's boyfriend, Sean. Investigators discovered that the couple had argued that evening, although Sean maintained that the disagreement was nothing serious and that minor arguments like this happened between them fairly regularly. Police investigated his alibi and determined that Sean could not have abducted Lauren and taken her outside town. As a result, he was eliminated from the suspect list. Even so, Sean continued blaming himself for Lauren's death because he had not accompanied her to her car that night. He had never imagined that anything terrible could happen to her on campus. Following Lauren's death, he struggled to stop blaming himself for what had happened. Not long afterward, police turned their attention toward another potential suspect. As we know, one witness had placed his jacket over Lauren and attempted to assist her before paramedics arrived. Yet afterward, the man simply departed, leaving his jacket with her at the scene. When the first officer reached that roadway, the man was still present. However, once Lauren was transported away in the ambulance and officers began interviewing witnesses, he had disappeared. Police began working to determine who the man was. Then, surprisingly, he arrived at the station himself. This occurred around midnight on the same night Lauren was murdered, before the police department had even publicly announced that they wanted to locate him. He was eventually identified as a student at the same university. He explained that he had not left the scene because he was concealing anything. According to his account, he had stopped because he wanted to help Lauren and had covered her with his jacket. After paramedics arrived, however, he moved aside and waited nearby. The weather was cold, and without his jacket, he began to freeze. Believing there was nothing more he could do, he returned to his vehicle and drove away. It was only after reaching home and telling his girlfriend about the incident that she advised him to go to police and provide a statement. Detectives reviewed his movements throughout that evening and verified that he could not have been the person who abducted Lauren. Therefore, he was eliminated as a suspect as well. Police also interviewed people who had been on campus around the period when Lauren's vehicle was burned. Those conversations produced very little useful information. Nobody reported seeing anything obviously suspicious. A few witnesses could only recall noticing a strong gasoline smell several minutes before the fire broke out. Meanwhile, the media began suggesting that Lauren's killing could be linked to another unresolved case. In 2006, 2 years earlier, Lori Slazinski, a student at the same university, had vanished without leaving a trace, and her vehicle was eventually discovered burned on the outskirts of town. Her disappearance had remained unsolved ever since. Following Lauren's murder, journalists could not overlook the remarkable similarities between the two cases. Yet there was another development that attracted attention. The following morning, a North Carolina student named Eve Carson was abducted, and her vehicle was later discovered abandoned. Detectives handling that investigation immediately reached out to their Alabama counterparts, who were working on Lauren's murder. They considered whether the person who killed Lauren could have traveled north afterward and abducted another student. That possibility, however, quickly collapsed. The two cities were separated by at least a 7-hour drive without stopping, while the crimes occurred just 8 hours apart. Therefore, investigators considered it extremely unlikely that one person had committed both crimes and moved away from that theory. Even so, connections of this kind caused the public to pay even closer attention to the case. Soon afterward, Alabama's governor publicly addressed Lauren's investigation. He offered a $10,000 reward for information and pledged to give law enforcement every resource available. Police received numerous tips, but none moved them any closer to identifying the person responsible. Their efforts to uncover additional physical evidence were not producing much either. Crime scene technicians thoroughly examined the remains of Lauren's car, but because the blaze had destroyed nearly everything, they were unable to recover even one fingerprint or DNA sample. Still, investigators noticed an important detail. Among Lauren's possessions inside the vehicle, they discovered burned fragments of her wallet and purse, yet her bank cards were missing. Detectives quickly contacted the banks where Lauren held accounts and requested transaction records for her cards. The first significant discovery showed that one of Lauren's cards had been used at a gas station only minutes after witnesses had seen her on the roadway. Someone had purchased fuel at a station positioned along the route leading from that highway back toward the university campus. But investigators soon discovered another transaction. Shortly after police began pursuing the bank card clue, they learned that Lauren's card had been used again. This time, the transaction occurred in Virginia, where someone purchased gas at a station near the Alabama border. On this occasion, police were also able to obtain surveillance footage showing the person using the card. Unfortunately, there was one major problem with the footage. The picture quality was extremely poor. Detectives could determine very little, other than the fact that the individual using the card appeared to be a young black man. Even with that limitation, investigators now had reason to believe the killer had probably crossed into another state. They passed that information along to colleagues in Georgia. Detectives continued trying to identify the man, but every potential lead seemed to end without an answer. Then came a call they never expected, one that would completely alter the course of the investigation. During this same period, police in Georgia were conducting their own investigation into a series of robberies that appeared to involve the same offender. On March 5th, one day after Lauren was killed, a man approached a woman in the parking lot of a nursing home, pointed a gun toward her, and ordered her to surrender her valuables. The following day, a comparable robbery occurred in a nearby town. In that incident, a man fitting the same description approached a woman in a store parking lot, aimed a gun at her child, and demanded money. The witnesses described him as a young black man, yet police had no means of determining his identity. Then, just one day later, he attacked again, and this time he made a major error. The assailant rushed toward a 72-year-old woman in a Walmart parking lot, struck her head with a gun, and forced her inside her own vehicle before attempting to drive away. However, he soon noticed that a witness had witnessed the incident and was chasing after the car. At that moment, the attacker leaped out in the parking lot, climbed into another vehicle, and fled. This time, detectives obtained surveillance footage showing the man's vehicle. After checking the license plate, they discovered the automobile was registered in Lee County, Alabama, close to the Georgia border. Police reached out to their counterparts in Alabama, and those officers revealed that they had investigated two comparable robberies only a few days earlier. Investigators in both states issued alerts concerning the suspect's vehicle and started deciding what they should do next. Yet only 30 minutes later, the investigation suddenly took a surprising turn. A patrol officer in Phoenix City, Alabama, directly along the Georgia border, stopped a vehicle for speeding. After checking its plates, he discovered that the automobile was wanted in connection with the robbery spree. The officer instructed the driver to exit and explained that he would contact investigators to come to the scene and question him. The driver stepped out, but almost instantly, he attacked the officer without warning and knocked him onto the ground. He then climbed back into his vehicle and sped away. The officer requested backup, and police began a tense pursuit. The suspect attempted to escape at high speed, veering off the roadway and forcing other vehicles aside as he went. At one point, officers watched him toss something through the window that appeared to be a gun. The pursuit continued until his vehicle unexpectedly stopped, and the suspect fled on foot toward the woods, but officers caught him and placed him under arrest. The man was identified as 23-year-old Courtney Lockhart. He was brought in for questioning, while forensic investigators took possession of his vehicle. Almost immediately after detectives started questioning him, Courtney admitted responsibility for the series of robberies, but he blamed his actions on PTSD, which he claimed had developed while serving overseas in the military. Investigators discovered that he had served in Iraq, but was eventually discharged from the Army following an extensive record of disciplinary issues. He had used drugs, fought with others, and had even assaulted a superior officer at one point. So, investigators now had his confession to the robberies, and they believed their investigation was nearly finished. In truth, however, this was merely the start. While detectives questioned Courtney at the station, forensic investigators searched his car and quickly discovered an iPod and a phone. After turning the devices on, they found numerous pictures of a young woman and realized that the items probably belonged to somebody else. By then, Georgia police had already learned about Lauren's killing, although they did not know exactly what the victim looked like. Officers therefore immediately contacted their counterparts in Alabama. Those investigators reached Lauren's sister, who confirmed that Lauren had owned a phone and an iPod matching those exact models. At that point, detectives handling Lauren's investigation immediately traveled to Georgia, while forensic specialists continued sending reports about additional evidence recovered from Courtney's vehicle. Inside, investigators discovered 3 empty .38 caliber shell casings and a t-shirt marked with blood. They also returned to the location where Courtney had tossed something from his window during the pursuit. There, concealed in the grass, they discovered the firearm, exactly as they had suspected. It was a .38 caliber gun, matching the caliber of the weapon used to kill Lauren. Once detectives started questioning Courtney about Lauren's death, he confessed that he had killed her. However, he insisted that the shooting had been accidental. Courtney explained that on the day Lauren was murdered, he drove to the parking area near the dorms and remained inside his vehicle, waiting for someone to rob. After a while, he noticed Lauren walking toward her car. He approached her, pulled a gun, and forced her into the passenger seat. He then moved behind the steering wheel. With the gun still pointed at her, he began driving around the city. Initially, he asked for money, and Lauren handed him $200, pleading with him to release her. Courtney, however, claimed he rejected the money, telling her that he did not need it. According to his account, he simply continued driving while talking to her about how badly his life had been going and how difficult it was to find employment. Lauren told him she could help him get a job and continued pleading for her release. Yet the same man who had supposedly been complaining about unemployment told her that he did not need her assistance because he already had a job. Detectives later discovered that he actually worked for a construction company. Then, Courtney told Lauren to remove all of her clothing. He claimed that he did this only to maintain control of the situation and prevent her from doing anything reckless. He maintained that sexually assaulting her had never been his intention, and that this was not why he had abducted her. Around that period, Lauren's friends and boyfriend were attempting to contact her. Courtney became concerned that they might alert police, so he permitted Lauren to take one call and instructed her to invent an excuse. She followed his instructions, saying she had forgotten the study session before ending the call. Later, Courtney claimed Lauren suddenly opened the door and jumped from the moving vehicle. He said that at precisely that moment, he accidentally fired the gun. He then stopped near the church and watched for some time while Lauren ran across the roadway. After realizing he could not force her back into the car without being noticed by several witnesses, he shut the door and drove off. He returned toward campus, first stopping at a gas station where he purchased fuel using Lauren's bank card. After leaving Lauren's vehicle parked, he poured the gasoline inside and attempted to ignite it. However, he could not work out how to start the fire without placing himself dangerously close to the flames. He therefore walked to his own nearby vehicle, took a Burger King paper bag, and used it to ignite the fire. Before departing, Courtney removed Lauren's iPod, phone, bank card, and $46 in cash. For some reason, though, he claimed he left the $200 behind. After igniting the vehicle, Courtney drove away. A short while later, however, he returned and watched the car burn. Once he was certain the flames would not die out, he continued toward Georgia. After listening to his account, detectives openly said they had serious doubts about several important parts of his story. The notion that robbery had been his primary motive seemed particularly odd, especially because Courtney himself claimed he had refused Lauren's $200 and subsequently left it inside her car. Even so, detectives knew that the financial aspect of his story contained some truth. Courtney was obviously struggling financially, and although he had employment, he was living in his vehicle. However, because he had forced Lauren to remove her clothing, investigators suspected there could have been another motive. They believed Courtney may have intended to sexually assault her. It was possible that he had initially been searching only for someone to rob, but after encountering Lauren, his intentions could have changed. Investigators thought he may have been taking her outside town to somewhere more isolated so he could carry out that plan. Lauren, however, jumped from the vehicle, and that was when he shot her in the back. Investigators rejected the claim that the gun had discharged accidentally, although Courtney continued maintaining that it had. Soon afterward, forensic specialists analyzed the blood-stained t-shirt recovered from Courtney's car and identified 2 DNA profiles, one belonging to him and the other to Lauren. This provided investigators with additional evidence connecting him to the crime, and they began assembling the case for trial. During that process, detectives discovered that Courtney had been receiving treatment from an Army psychiatrist until his discharge, and that the psychiatrist had found no indication of PTSD. He had, however, documented that Courtney had a relatively low IQ, 86, and displayed immaturity as well as difficulty making sound decisions. The trial opened on November 8, 2010, over 2 years after Lauren's murder. Courtney's lawyers did not attempt to dispute that he had abducted and killed her. Instead, they pursued another defense strategy. They sought to persuade jurors that the shooting was accidental and that the entire incident resulted from mental health problems Courtney had supposedly developed after his service in Iraq. Prosecutors, meanwhile, worked to establish that Courtney deliberately killed Lauren and had intended to sexually assault her. At the same time, his attorneys managed to prevent certain details from being presented to the jury. Prosecutors were barred from mentioning the robberies Courtney had committed before and after Lauren's death, and they were likewise prohibited from discussing why he had been discharged from the Army. Ultimately, the jury spent 6 1/2 hours deliberating before reaching its verdict. By then, Lauren's case continued to attract substantial media coverage, and those following the proceedings were deeply surprised by the jury's decision. They convicted Courtney on only one count and found him not guilty of attempted assault. Most significantly, however, they recommended life imprisonment rather than the death penalty sought by prosecutors. Then another unexpected development followed. Despite the jury's unanimous recommendation, the judge invoked an extremely rare rule permitting him to overturn their decision. Ultimately, he changed Courtney's punishment from life in prison to death, and Courtney was sent to prison while awaiting execution. That day, however, has yet to arrive, and Courtney's lawyers continue challenging the sentence. Over the years, they have submitted numerous appeals, but none has succeeded so far. Nevertheless, each effort to overturn the sentence remains painful for Lauren's family. They must return to court repeatedly, fighting to ensure that the punishment imposed on their daughter's killer remains intact. They explain their determination this way. Courtney sentenced Lauren to death without a judge, without a jury, and without any opportunity to defend herself. Therefore, they will not stop until he receives the same. This story brings us to Logan, Ohio, within the Hocking Hills area of southeastern Ohio, around 45 miles from Columbus. It is a town of nearly 7,000 residents, small enough for familiar faces everywhere and gossip to spread like wildfire. On an otherwise typical Tuesday evening, the 22nd of March, 2011, 25-year-old Summer Inman headed off to work. She worked as a night janitor for Century National Bank in downtown Logan, Ohio, a shift she was expected to complete at 11:20 p.m. When Summer failed to return home that night, her parents became deeply concerned. Her father, Michael, went out searching for her, but discovered only her coat and iPod in the alley behind Century National Bank, the same alley she used each night, the exit from the building. Confused and uncertain about what could have occurred, he contacted the police for help that night.
911, where's your emergency? I'm calling about my daughter, Summer Inman. She's nowhere to be found. We found her coat and her iPod.
That same night, Logan police opened their investigation. Officers searched throughout the entire surrounding area. Surveillance video inside the bank had recorded Summer during the hours leading up to her disappearance. Still wearing the black t-shirt, her hair tied in a ponytail, looking completely like herself. Then the recording stopped and she was nowhere beyond it. Before long, people began talking. 2 separate witnesses gave matching accounts of events. Later that night, close to the bank, they saw 2 men pushing a woman into a white car being driven by a blonde woman. The woman being pushed inside was petite, blonde, perhaps 5'3", and clearly wasn't going voluntarily. The attackers had a taser with them. That detail emerged almost immediately. They knew exactly why they were there. Police moved quickly with the investigation. It wasn't simply that officers acted fast. The kidnappers had left clues behind. Perhaps they believed nobody would solve it so quickly, or ever. The vehicle witnesses described, a white Ford Crown Victoria, an ex-police car, had just been purchased by someone close to Summer just 2 days before she disappeared. Less than 2 days after the 911 call, officers arrested 3 people. Summer's estranged husband, William Inman II, his father, Bill Inman, and his mother, Sandra Inman. All 3 were charged with kidnapping. None of them revealed where Summer was.
Story tonight, a woman from southern Ohio has been missing for a week with her husband and in-laws behind bars for kidnapping. Now the search has taken investigators nearly 200 miles north to Cleveland. News Channel 5's Dan Haggerty spoke with...
For 7 days, Logan remained anxiously waiting. Nobody wanted to voice the question haunting the community. People understood, despite hoping their fears were mistaken. Neighbors and friends organized search teams across 4 counties. The FBI joined the investigation. Chief Aaron Miller continued providing updates, yet everyone was truly listening for the one answer nobody wanted to hear. Then on March 29th, Sandra Inman finally broke her silence and told detectives where Summer's body could be found. She directed them to Faith Tabernacle Church, a modest brick building just north of Nelsonville, roughly 10 miles from Logan. The Inmans had spent years at that place. Bill had even helped construct it, personally laying the foundation himself. He played piano and guitar during services. He knew every part of that property in a way only someone who helped create it could. Behind the building, investigators discovered an old septic tank partly buried and tightly sealed. They took out the screws and lifted the heavy cover. Inside, head first, lay Summer Inman. She was wearing the same black t-shirt and pants she'd worn when leaving home. Her purse remained hanging from her arm. The following morning, Chief Miller stood before the press.
It would appear that she was killed very quickly that evening.
He said Summer never survived that first night. While the entire town searched, gathered for candlelight vigils, and prayed for a miracle, she was already dead. Summer Dawn Cook was born in Logan, Ohio on the 31st of December 1985, the year's final day. She was Michael and Debbie Cook's daughter, Mike and Debbie to everyone who knew them. Logan was where she grew up, attending local schools and moving through the familiar geography of a small Ohio city. She was lively. As a young girl, she enrolled in ballet and jazz classes, spending 3 years doing them. She gave herself to it with the same enthusiasm that marked nearly everything she attempted. Sports were just different. Her mother, Debbie, remembered that Summer simply couldn't throw a baseball, not accurately, not toward any particular target. It would simply head wherever it wanted, Debbie said. She finished Logan High School in 2004. That year, at 18, Summer married William Inman II, who went by Will. He was 19. They had known each other as teenagers through the same church community that had first given Summer a feeling of belonging. His father, William Inman Sr., known as Bill, was an important figure at Faith Tabernacle Church near Nelsonville, helping construct the building and performing music during services. Sandra, his mother, was always beside by Bill. They were an extremely close family, bound not merely through blood, but also by the way they appeared together. The newlyweds moved into a home beside Bill and Sandra. At first, things seemed steady. Family close by, children arriving, and the ordinary patterns of home life. 3 children were born during those years: Alexander, Kaylee, Alana. Summer adored them, giving them a fierce, focused daily attention that didn't need an audience to be genuine. But as the years went on, the marriage changed into something different. In the divorce papers Summer eventually filed in June of 2010, after 6 years, she carefully described what had been taking place within that home. She depicted a husband who threatened to kill her if she ever attempted to take the children. He would take her car keys, wallet, phone, essentially anything that provided her independence, and keep them from her so she couldn't even get out of the house. It was as though the doors themselves required permission she didn't possess. Her in-laws offered no help either. Rather than stand behind her, they pressured her to remain married, repeatedly forcing her back toward the relationship whenever she tried to move beyond it. They would gang up on me, she wrote, and try to get me to just work things out. There is a disturbing account involving Will. He took her cats, drove away, then returned without them. She never discovered what became of them. Coverage of her case appeared everywhere, and much of it was accurate, but journalists moved quickly past the ordinary details of what Summer Inman was actually doing during the year before her death. Most likely because the killing and investigation were so extraordinary. You see, Summer wasn't merely filing paperwork and hoping things worked out. She filed for divorce. She did everything she was supposed to do. For each child exchange, she went to the sheriff's office in Logan, right inside the law enforcement building, because that was the safest location for her. The media described it as a bitter divorce and a contentious custody dispute. Yes, those descriptions were accurate, but they hardly explain the reasoning behind Summer's decisions. She was dealing with a man who had told her directly and in writing that leaving him meant death. She believed him. She kept records of it. Adam Peters, who later became her fiancé, gave her hope for a different and better future. She brought her children to her parents' home in Logan and began again. She was moving towards something better. That matters. During the early hours of March 23rd, detectives were already assembling the pieces. Sometimes investigations like this move quickly when the evidence hasn't been hidden. Witnesses watched Summer being forced into a white Crown Victoria. Their description was unmistakable, a former police vehicle, like those used by law enforcement. Witnesses said a blonde woman was driving. Sandra Inman, Summer's mother-in-law, had blonde hair then. The vehicle matched, as did the timing and locations. Everything fit. On the morning after Summer disappeared, March 23rd, surveillance video captured William Inman II at a car wash at 7:30 a.m. with the Crown Victoria. He wasn't by himself. The family was there, working on the vehicle, attempting to wash it, methodically taking away whatever had to be removed. They stopped at an auto parts store, then traveled to a junkyard in Cleveland, roughly 140 miles from Logan, and exchanged nearly new tires for 4 that were considerably worse. These weren't the actions of people with nothing to conceal. Investigators secured a warrant and confiscated several cell phones and Garmin GPS units from the family's Akron home. The GPS offered the strongest account of the night of March 22nd. The device showed the family in Logan when Summer was abducted. It then followed their path south toward Nelsonville into Athens County, and then north again, returning toward Akron. Faith Tabernacle Church, just north of Nelsonville, the church where Bill Inman had helped before saying he felt called to preach and leaving to establish his own ministry, an effort that never successfully took hold. He knew that all too well. William Inman II, Sandra Inman, and William Inman Ice were arrested on the 24th of March, 2 days after Summer vanished. Each faced kidnapping charges. None cooperated. None provided investigators with anything useful. Bill Inman's dealings with law enforcement, as it turned out, had their own history in this investigation. Months earlier, in December of 2010, officers had gone to the Inman family home. Summer was there with her boyfriend Adam Peters and a sheriff deputy to retrieve more of her belongings during the end of an eviction proceeding. What happened that day was recorded by a police cruiser dash cam. Bill Inman confronted Deputy Ryan Kane directly. The situation became so severe that a taser was needed to regain control. When Deputy Kane later learned that the Inmans were under investigation over Summer's disappearance, he wasn't surprised. William Inman is their leader, he told reporters. Like their king, they'll do what he says. They're blinded by loyalty and he's blinded by rage. The investigation continued with GPS evidence at its core. Investigators had a timeline and a path. They had a vehicle the family had tried to clean and then equipped with different tires. But while in custody, they remained silent. 6 days following the arrests, Sandra Inman finally broke during an interrogation with detectives.
Tell me where she's at over there. Is there a pipe that she's inside of, anything like that?
No, it's the thing.
Like a cistern? A
Yeah.
lid that you pop up?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a cistern is like just a tank and she's down inside the tank. When did you guys put her in there? The same night that
Yeah.
Following the discovery, Brian D. Castell, a forensic pathologist and deputy coroner of Montgomery County, performed an autopsy. His conclusions were careful and horrifying. Summer Inman had been strangled. A plastic zip tie had been tightened around her neck. Zip ties had also restrained her wrists. From the evidence, Logan Police Chief Miller publicly confirmed that she had been murdered almost immediately after being abducted. As detectives reconstructed the chain of events, the vehicle purchase, the GPS route, the car wash the next morning, the tire swap in Cleveland, the harder it became for any different account to survive. One fact was undeniable. This had been deliberate. 3 members of the Inman family had occupied that car. All 3 would ultimately stand before a judge. The legal process was neither swift nor simple. William Inman II, Will, went to trial first in Hocking County Common Pleas Court in June of 2012. Hocking County prosecutor Lena Featherhoff argued the state's case with the steady focus of someone who possessed the evidence and understood precisely where it pointed. Josh Durst testified and explained what he discovered behind Faith Tabernacle Church. The jury was shown photographs from the scene. After approximately 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on every count. 2 counts of aggravated murder, plus 1 count each of murder, kidnapping, tampering with evidence, and gross abuse of a corpse. They recommended life imprisonment without parole. William Inman II was 27 years old when the sentence was handed down. Sandra Inman never faced a trial. She appeared before the court and pleaded guilty to every charge: murder, kidnapping, abduction, tampering with evidence, and gross abuse of a corpse. She cried throughout the proceedings. She offered an apology to Summers' family. The judge sentenced her to 15 years to life in prison. Sandra Inman's guilty plea mattered. She had been inside that car. She had driven it. From the moment it happened, she knew where Summer was. And for 6 days, while Michael Cook made calls and a community of 7,000 searched, and Jamie Richards waited beside a phone that would never ring, Sandra Inman remained silent. Eventually, she broke. The investigation reached its answer because she talked, and that matters. Summer's body was recovered, the family was prosecuted, and the case was built in part because she finally revealed what she knew. Her 15 years to life sentence reflected her guilty plea, cooperation, and the court's assessment of her role in the crime. It cannot, and does not, capture what the Cook family endured during a week of uncertainty, while one of the 3 people already in custody knew exactly where Summer was and deliberately chose, hour after hour, not to tell them. That is not a legal conclusion. The court made its judgment, and it is not my role to second-guess it. It is simply an observation. William A. Inman Sr. Bill was the final defendant to face the court, and he did not make the process easy. His first trial, held in Hocking County in August of 2012, ended with a mistrial. Because the case had received such extensive regional coverage, securing an impartial jury in Hocking County proved impossible. The trial was transferred to Ross County Common Pleas Court in Chillicothe, where jury selection began in January of 2013. Eventually, 2 men and 10 women were chosen to hear the case. The evidence introduced in Chillicothe was the same evidence investigators had possessed from the start: the GPS, the car wash, the Cleveland Tire Exchange, the witnesses, the vehicle, the church. Bill Inman's defense tried to introduce testimony from a Hocking County Sheriff's deputy, claiming Sandra had told that deputy that their son alone was responsible for the strangling. The trial judge rejected the motion. Under the court's rulings, the evidence the defense wanted to present could not be admitted. Bill Inman denied murdering Summer. He never testified. The jury convicted him on every count, including 2 counts of aggravated murder. During sentencing, prosecutors pursued the death penalty. The jury considered that option but rejected it. Instead, they recommended life imprisonment without parole. When Bill Inman addressed the court during sentencing, he apologized to Summer's family. He said he regretted killing Summer Inman, the same man who had insisted throughout his trial that he was not responsible. Hocking County Judge John Wallace sentenced him in February of 2013 to life without parole, plus 14 additional consecutive years. 10 years for kidnapping, 3 years for tampering with evidence, 1 year for gross abuse of a corpse. Bill Inman was 48 years old at the time. After the sentence was completed, Judge Wallace spoke to the courtroom. "This has been a long and unpleasant road for the people of Logan and Hocking County, and obviously for Summer Inman's family. I have nothing but sorrow about this whole matter. From the beginning, the motive had been custody. Summer had filed for divorce. She was seeking custody of Alexander, Kaylee, and Alana. So they went to the alley behind Century National Bank, carrying a taser and zip tie, and abducted her before she could complete what she had begun. A memorial fund was later created in Summer Inman's name at Century National Bank, the same place where she had worked. The Summer Inman Fund was established for the benefit of her 3 children. Summer Inman had a civil protection order when she was killed. In her own words, she had written that her husband threatened to kill her. She had taken every step the system advises someone facing this type of danger to take. Yet on a Tuesday night, the people responsible for those threats took her. A civil protection order remains only a piece of paper. It can alter the charges a perpetrator may face, but it cannot physically prevent someone from acting. The distance between what the law promises and what occurs in actual life is not some unusual failure. It is a recognized, documented problem with how these orders function, particularly when domestic violence enters custody disputes. Summer's circumstances were made even more dangerous by the nature of the threat. It wasn't only her husband, it was an entire family, a patriarch, wife, and son acting together beneath one controlling presence. Deputy Kane understood Bill Inman correctly. They'll do what he says. They're blinded by loyalty, and he's blinded by rage. The order identified one individual, yet 3 people ultimately killed Summer. Nothing about this case produced any obvious change to Ohio's protection order laws. But her story demonstrates how enormous the distance can be between legal protection and actual safety. Summer's case matters not because she made mistakes, but because she followed every step correctly and it still wasn't enough. A 24-year-old woman, brilliant, lively, and brimming with promise, entered a quiet restaurant one evening in Malibu, California. Her name was Matrice Richardson. By every indication, the night should have been uneventful, yet what unfolded inside that restaurant would trigger a tragic mystery that still haunts those who knew her, along with countless others who never did. That night, Matrice was taken into police custody. That fact is not disputed, but only a few hours afterward, during the early morning hours, she was released from the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station, by herself, without a phone, money, or transportation, into the chilly darkness of the Santa Monica Mountains. That night, she disappeared without leaving a trace. For months, her name resounded across news reports, was murmured inside homes, called out during protests, and lifted in the prayers of a devastated family. Theories multiplied, contradictory accounts appeared, yet definitive answers remained elusive. Then, when her remains were eventually found nearly a year later, buried deep within a rugged canyon, the mystery became even more disturbing. What actually happened to Matrice Richardson? Why had she been released under circumstances so vulnerable? And why, after all these years, does justice still seem so distant? To comprehend her story, we first have to know the young woman behind the headlines. Matrice LaVaughn Richardson was born on April 3, 1985, to Lattice Sutton and Michael Richardson, who were both still attending high school then. Young, unsure, and trying to manage lives of their own, they faced the difficult choice of having Matrice raised by her great-grandmother in Covina, California. It was a loving household, though circumstances continued to change. Her parents eventually went their separate ways, and afterward, Matrice returned to live with her mother, who married Larry Sutton. Once her stepfather became part of the household, Matrice adjusted quickly. Even as a child, she was captivating, constantly moving, constantly laughing. She danced and brightened every room. She was someone people simply couldn't forget. Her presence was vibrant, her personality impossible to overlook. And that is precisely why the quiet surrounding her case feels so overwhelming. A light that brilliant should never have disappeared that easily, nor should it have taken so many years to learn what happened. That same spirit followed her through her education. She attended South Hills High School in Covina before going on to California State University, Fullerton. Matrice was more than a capable student. She was outstanding. A 4 GPA honors graduate with a psychology degree, she became the first person in her family to complete college. Those years were also a period of discovering herself. As she managed the pressures of academics, she embraced who she was, coming out as a lesbian to her family, who gave her their full support. She was ambitious, envisioned graduate school, and was still building the future she wanted. After graduating in 2008, she accepted several different roles. She held a store clerk position, danced at an LGBTQ+ club, and interned under Dr. Rhonda Hampton, a psychologist who recognized something promising in Matrice, but also noticed something concerning because despite everything she had accomplished, something seemed wrong. Matrice's behavior started changing in ways that worried those around her. Friends observed shifts in her moods, while her social media entries turned unusual, becoming fragmented rants unlike the Matrice they remembered. Dr. Hampton later remembered incidents from the internship that concerned her, experiences suggesting a struggle beneath the surface. By 2009, Matrice had returned to her great-grandmother's home, who was then 91 years old. It was a peaceful household, a source of stability, and a bond founded on caring for each other. Matrice served as a companion to her great-grandmother, providing assistance and companionship while receiving a place to live in return. While she considered what would come next, her entire future remained ahead of her. Yet something was approaching, a change, one night, that would tear everything apart. Her life took a different turn on September 16, 2009. The Pacific Coast Highway ran beside Malibu's cliffs, mostly silent apart from the occasional passing vehicle. The night was calm, yet there was something disturbing about it. Malibu was unfamiliar territory for Matrice. She knew Covina, the place where she had grown up. She knew Fullerton, where she had thrived while studying psychology. She knew Long Beach, where she danced Friday nights beneath neon lights. She knew South LA, where her father lived. And she knew the quiet streets around 118th and Central, where she lived with her great-grandmother. But Malibu? It was outside her world. Then she noticed it, a sign illuminated with gentle blue letters. Jeffries, located below Point Dume. Jeffrey's was an upscale restaurant recognized for its ocean views and exclusive clientele. Matrice drove into the parking lot. She switched off the engine and remained seated briefly. The valet walked over, expecting her to give him her keys, but something wasn't right. Before he could reach her, she had already left her car and moved into his. She found the door open and settled into the driver's seat of his vehicle. Her posture was relaxed, as though nothing about this seemed unusual at all. Hazel eyes looked up at him, carrying an energy he couldn't read. Curly hair escaped from beneath a Rastafarian-style hat. She had on a long-sleeved white shirt beneath a black Bob Marley t-shirt, matched with faded jeans and a pink alligator mixered belt. Her Vans showed some wear, but appearances seemed unimportant to her. The valet paused for a moment, visibly uncertain. She wasn't hostile, yet something in her conduct seemed unusual, and when she spoke, her words were cryptic. She murmured something about Michael Jackson's death, as though working through a mystery only she could understand. Then, with the same casual manner, she gave him her own car keys and posed an odd question. "Vanessa here?" She instructed him to watch for a girl whose arms were tattooed, as though he should already understand whom she meant. Before he could answer, she casually walked past him into the restaurant. Matrice sat down and ordered a Kobe steak with an ocean breeze cocktail. Initially, she ate by herself. Soon, however, her attention shifted toward a nearby table, where 7 people were having an animated conversation. Without hesitation, she rose and approached them, entering their discussion as naturally as though she'd belonged there all along. Her behavior was erratic, her speech rapid and fragmented. She discussed astrological signs, moving between subjects without stopping. The group traded looks, unsure of what to make of her but amused. She wasn't creating a disturbance, simply acting in a manner that seemed offbeat and strange. Eventually, she went back to her table, yet minutes afterward she returned. This time, she had something to announce. She was headed to Hawaii. She promised to call them after she arrived. They smiled courteously, politely indulging her unusual announcement. Soon they settled their bill and departed, leaving Matrice behind. She remained there. When she attempted to leave, the restaurant manager intervened. Her bill was still unpaid, totaling $89. Confusion immediately crossed her face. Hadn't the other table paid for it? Matrice was told she needed to settle her bill, which seemed to shock her. A slow smile appeared, as though she found the situation amusingly mistaken. She stared toward the restaurant's computer monitor, watching the figures flash and shift. Her expression changed as she drifted into thought. "I am busted," she eventually said. "What are we going to do?" While the manager continued speaking, she paid no attention. Her gaze stayed locked on the screen, as if she were interpreting something no one else could see. Then her manner shifted. She uttered something unusual. She wasn't from here. She came from Mars. Her voice remained calm and her expression showed no concern. She wasn't kidding. The staff became uneasy. When she emptied her pockets, all she discovered was a small joint. A restaurant worker picked up the phone and called the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station. They told the sheriff this girl appeared crazy and that she might be on drugs or something. Far away, the glow of approaching headlights pierced the darkness. A patrol vehicle was approaching. Matrice's night, however, was nowhere near finished. It was only just starting. As the sheriff's deputies traveled there, Matrice kept talking, now speaking with the hostess. She explained that she had been watching a soap opera at work earlier that day, when God told her to take the afternoon off. She spoke with certainty, as though there could be no doubt about what she was saying. Then came another unusual claim. She said she had no parents, only her great-grandmother Mildred. Concerned, the hostess chose to call Mildred. When the elderly woman answered, worry filled her voice. She immediately offered her credit card number to cover the bill. But there was a problem. The restaurant needed a signature. The 90-year-old Mildred couldn't provide one. She was still speaking on the phone at about 9 p.m. when Lost Hills deputies Frank Brower, Armando Lerrero, and John McKay arrived. The manager promptly explained what had occurred and described Matrice's strange behavior. One deputy took the phone from the hostess and spoke with Mildred, who begged them to look after her great-granddaughter. Then the phone was handed to Matrice. She sounded entirely unfazed, as though nothing about the circumstances troubled her. Mildred, however, wasn't amused. "You put that phone close to your ear," she warned. "They're get ready to take your black ass to jail." Her words reflected experience, carrying the urgency of a grandmother who recognized trouble when she sensed it. Once the call ended, Mildred acted immediately. She dialed another number without delay. Latice Sutton, Matrice's mother. Matrice's mother was already concerned. After learning her daughter had been arrested, she contacted the sheriff's station before Matrice had even arrived. Would they release her that night? She wanted to know. Letice was uneasy. Matrice didn't know the area, and this behavior was completely unlike her. She even attempted a joke, hoping to loosen the growing knot of fear in her stomach. At 12:30 a.m., Matrice was released from the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Department, alone, 50 miles from home, without a phone, wallet, or car. She walked into the night, fading into the darkness. By the time Letice learned what had happened, morning had already arrived by then, and so began the exhausting cycle of returning to the doorsteps of law enforcement, demanding justice for their beloved daughter. For months, Matrice's name remained prominently at the top of missing persons reports, drawing attention to her disappearance. At that point, questions emerged. Was she working as a prostitute or being held against her will? Her father, Michael Richardson, became convinced he had spotted her in January. While in Las Vegas, he noticed a young woman who walked like Matrice, who moved like her. He nearly got struck, but when he reached her, she had vanished from sight, just as she had that night in Malibu. In the days after Matrice Richardson vanished, her father, Michael Richardson, urgently sought assistance again from local officials. He went to Malibu Mayor Andy Stern, hoping to gather support for the search. Instead of gaining an ally, however, he was dismissed. Stern, who was rushing to a meeting, rejected Richardson's request, saying he didn't have time to stop and speak. Michael Richardson, though, refused to be disregarded. He chose to test the mayor's priorities. He phoned Stern's real estate company, disguising his voice and pretending to be a black professional football player interested in buying one of Stern's multi-million-dollar properties. The reaction was immediate. Stern suddenly had time, eagerly offering to cancel his meeting and show the property immediately. Once he realized he was actually talking with the same man he had just turned away, Stern was startled and embarrassed. The episode revealed plenty about whose concerns the mayor considered deserving of his time. Their tensions intensified in October, when Richardson contacted Stern again about the case. The mayor abruptly ended the call, later alleging Richardson had become abusive, angry, and desperate. Richardson left voicemails threatening to arrange a protest outside the mayor's office. Stern answered by reporting Richardson to the sheriff's department. Despite the sluggish and reluctant response from local officials, the search for Matrice continued. By November, Malibu's city government finally announced a $15,000 0-cents reward for information that could lead to her whereabouts. The following month, in December, Congresswoman Maxine Waters stepped in, asking the FBI to investigate the case. In January, officers from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the LAPD combined efforts to search throughout the Lost Hills and Malibu Canyon area. But by then, vital time had already been lost. Matrice Richardson was 24 when she disappeared. For many people that age, life is about creating a future. But for some, those years mark the first full manifestation of mental illness. Bipolar disorder, considered an adult-onset disorder, often does not appear until a person's early or mid-20s. Accounts from witnesses on the night of her arrest strongly indicate that Matrice was experiencing a manic episode. Employees at Jeffrey's Malibu characterized her conduct as erratic. She appeared euphoric, discussing astrological signs and insisting she came from Mars. She gravitated toward strangers, believing they would cover her meal, and when challenged over her unpaid bill, she became distant, seemingly unable to fully comprehend the situation at all. The restaurant manager observed her fixation with numerical patterns on a computer screen, while her thoughts became incomprehensible statements. Her speech, delusions, and impulsive behavior were all warning signs. Yet authorities failed to recognize these indicators and instead dismissed them. The sheriff's department never carried out a proper mental health assessment. Rather, they put her back into the night, alone in an isolated area she had never visited, without her car, phone, or money. After Matrice vanished, her father spoke with a restaurant worker who disclosed a troubling detail. Her car contained clothes, purses, books, makeup, and piles of journals, almost as though she had been living from it. Friends later confirmed that sleeping in her car for several days at a time was not unusual for her. Taken together, every indication pointed toward a mental health crisis. Her mother, Letice Sutton, had contacted the sheriff's station on the night of her arrest, begging them not to release her during the middle of the night. She explained that Matrice did not know the area, and her conduct was completely unlike her. She even mentioned her fear of finding her daughter's head chopped off, presenting it as a joke. never realizing that what she feared might happen. When a police officer believes an arrested person is mentally unstable, the officer can place them under a 5150 hold, a legal designation for someone who could pose a danger to themselves or others. In such circumstances, the person may either remain under close observation at the station or be taken to a hospital for a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. But either choice requires additional paperwork, time, and effort. Yet, none of those measures happened to Mitris Richardson. The deputy who arrested her, Loretto, recorded nothing unusual in his report. No strange conduct, no peculiar statements, only a straightforward charge, failing to pay her bill at Jeffrey's and possessing a small amount of marijuana. Her record was clean. Holding her without justification would have violated policy. Mitris never phoned her mother from jail. The sole number she knew by memory belonged to her great-grandmother, Mildred. Jail logbooks indicate she attempted to call Mildred 4 times that night. Later, the sheriff's department said she had made a call, but Mildred insists her phone never rang. Then another disturbing detail emerged. The station's payphone was broken, so Mitris had been forced to use a line that did not record calls. No one could say whether she actually reached anyone. She may have been speaking to nothing more than a dial tone. She sat alone inside that cold, fluorescent-lit room, unable to contact her family. Her mother, Lettuce, believed Mitris would remain in the holding cell overnight, but at 5:35 a.m., she phoned the station to ask about her daughter, only to hear words that would stay with her forever. "She's not here." Jailer Sharon Cummings knew Mitris had no belongings. She carried only her driver's license and 2 keys in her pocket. Cummings also knew that nobody had arrived to collect her. Still, despite those facts, Mitris was released at 12:15 a.m. into the pitch-black night, alone and with nowhere to go. The sheriff's department later said she had been offered somewhere to stay in the lobby, but refused, claiming she was meeting friends. But which friends? Nobody was waiting for her. The jail stood beside an isolated stretch of road. The closest businesses that were open sat a mile away, hidden beyond empty sidewalks and dark buildings. Past that was nothing but the enormous, sprawling wilderness. Shortly after talking with Cummings, Latice called the station once more. This time, she spoke with Deputy Kenneth Baumgartner. She could not have known that this conversation would become the start of a nightmare following her daughter's release. The sightings of Mitris were disturbing, to put it mildly. At 5:30 a.m., a man contacted the sheriff's department after finding a young black woman sleeping on his lawn. When he approached, she told him she was simply resting. By the time deputies reached the location, she had vanished once more. Then, at 7:30 a.m., another report described a black woman walking through the area. After that, there were no more leads. For months, rumors circulated that Mitris had been seen in downtown Los Angeles and even Las Vegas. Some believed she was being held against her will or forced into sex work. Remember when her father nearly got hit? He believed he had spotted her in Las Vegas, encountering a girl whose walk and body language matched his daughter's. The resemblance was so unsettling that he leapt from a moving car, putting himself in danger simply to pursue her. Yet authorities dismissed what he said, taking the claim seriously only after another witness described something similar. The notion that Mitris had simply disappeared without leaving a trace was not merely unlikely, it was impossible. The sheriff's department defended releasing Mitris by saying she had passed a field sobriety test and displayed no obvious evidence of impairment. But that explanation overlooked the reality of mental illness. Someone experiencing mania does not necessarily look visibly distressed. They can appear alert, talkative, and even unusually energetic. That does not mean they are well. What rational person would willingly leave an unfamiliar place with no resources in the middle of the night? The answer is straightforward. Someone who is not thinking clearly. Even so, despite her mother's urgent warning and the strange conduct witnessed earlier that evening, Mitris was sent away alone. The Friends Group of Pasadena later wrote the sheriff's department, demanding openness about its nighttime release policies. Why had there been no mental health evaluation? Why wasn't Mitris kept for additional observation? After Mitris Richardson disappeared, people wanted answers. Then, nearly a year later, her body was found, and the mystery became even more sinister. On a hot August afternoon in 2010, park rangers made the disturbing discovery. They were deep inside Dark Canyon, a remote, rugged section of the Santa Monica Mountains, inspecting an old marijuana farm. Police had raided the farm the previous year, leaving it abandoned, but the rangers were checking to ensure nobody had returned to restart the operation. Dark Canyon offered an ideal hiding place, dense with trees and steep hills. Reaching it was difficult, and few people traveled there. Although it was near Malibu and Calabasas, the canyon felt entirely isolated from civilization. The route required scrambling across boulders and forcing through sharp, scratchy brush. Poison oak covered the area, while the creek running through the canyon left the ground slick and uneven. Anyone traveling through that terrain needed to move carefully. The rangers discovered the familiar remnants of an abandoned grow site. Coiled garden hoses, broken pipes, and other scattered equipment remained, but there were no new plants. Once satisfied the farm remained shut down, they began making their way back. Then something caught their attention. A clearing roughly 60 feet from the creek. At first, it appeared ordinary, nothing more than soil and fallen leaves. But as they moved closer, something pale became visible against the dark ground. A skull with a body beneath it. The remains were severely decomposed, lying uncovered and exposed in the dirt. The rangers stopped cold. They had arrived expecting to inspect a former drug operation, but instead had discovered something much worse. They immediately radioed for assistance. The Malibu or Lost Hills Sheriff Station, the same station that had released Mitris alone into the night almost a year earlier. I was alerted. Deputies arrived soon after, securing the scene and contacting the coroner. Although confirmation had not yet come, they already understood. The missing woman had finally been found. For the family, the unanswered questions surrounding that night had only become more painful with every passing month, every failed search, and every rumor. Yet, rather than providing closure, the discovery created even more troubling questions. How had Mitris reached this secluded canyon, miles away from where she had last been seen? Had she traveled there by herself, or had someone taken her there? And most hauntingly, what really happened to Mitris Richardson? Thanks for watching Crime Chapter 51. If you enjoyed today's cases, let us know in the comments which one stayed with you the most. And tell us where you're watching from. If you love long-form true crime documentaries, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next case.